Hi everyone, welcome back to Learn with Michaela, and if you're new here, hi, it's great to meet you. Today we're diving into superlatives, those handy words that allow us to say whether something is the best, the biggest, or the most exciting. Superlatives can be very tricky, but I guarantee you that by the end of this video, you will feel confident using them and know how not to make those very common mistakes. But before we get started, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe and turn on that notification bell so that you can be notified every single time I post and so you don't miss one of my videos. Yes, don't miss them. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So a good place to start would be, what are superlatives? Superlatives are words we use to describe something as being at the top or bottom of the list. For example, there are 3 dogs and one of them is the fastest. We could say, this one is the fastest dog. Likewise, if we had a really slow dog, we could say, this dog is the slowest. It's like another way of saying this one is the winner, this one is the loser in this category. So how do we form superlatives? Well, there are 3 main categories: short adjectives, long adjectives, and of course, irregular adjectives. So we will break each one of these categories down and then put them all together with a little test and some examples, of course. Let's start with short adjectives. Those are words with just one syllable. For example, tall, small, or big. For these, it's pretty easy. You just add est to the end of each word. For example, small becomes the smallest, tall becomes the tallest, and big becomes the biggest. And note here, we've got a double G for the double consonant. One common mistake that learners make is that they often forget to double the consonant following one vowel and a consonant. So always remember, big will be biggest with 2 G's. Or the word hot becomes hottest. Don't forget to double the consonant for those short adjectives. Now, what about longer adjectives with 2 or more syllables? Unfortunately, unlike short adjectives, you can't just add est. Instead, we have to use the most or the least. For example, beautiful becomes the most beautiful, or the least beautiful if you want to have a negative, or expensive becomes the most expensive or the least expensive. One common mistake I often see is that students mix up the short and long adjectives. So they will make words like the beautifulest or the expensiveest. I can't even say it. Don't do that. Just remember, short adjectives use est at the end of each word. And if it's got 2 or more syllables, remember, you've got to have the most or the least. Now let's take a look at some exceptions to watch out for, as unfortunately, not all adjectives are regular. Good, bad, and far do not follow the rules at all. No! So let me tell you what their irregular words would be. Good becomes the best, bad becomes the worst, and far becomes the farthest or the furthest. Both of these work. In English, we don't say goodest or baddest. These don't exist in the English language, so remember, these are 3 essential exceptions to remember. So now let's talk about how to use superlatives correctly. The first rule is that you always need to use the word the before the superlative. For example, she is the smartest student in the class. Or, this is the most delicious cake I've ever had. A common mistake some students make is dropping the. So remember, it's essential to use it. Otherwise, it just sounds strange. So always use the smartest, the best, the greatest. When using superlatives, it's also important to make sure that you're comparing something within a group. For example, it would be correct to say, Mount Everest is the highest mountain in the world. But it would be incorrect to say Mount Everest is the highest, because it's without a group. We have no idea what we're comparing to. So always bear that in mind. It's about comparing. Another mistake to avoid making is trying to use superlatives to compare just 2 things. Superlatives are just used for groups of 3 or more. So if you're just comparing two things, you need to use the comparative form instead. For example, this car is faster than that one. That's the comparative form. This is the fastest car in the showroom. Superlative. Now it's time to test your skills. Pause the video and try to fill in the gaps with the correct superlatives. I will be putting all of the answers in the description so you can check them when you have finished. So before we finish today's video, here are just a few tips to remember. Always use the before superlatives. Know when to double consonants. We don't want to see biggest with just one G. And don't forget to memorize those irregular forms. I know they're annoying, but they're worth learning. And that's everything you need to know about superlatives. I hope you feel more confident and ready to tackle them in everyday conversations. For a bit of extra practice, why don't you try and write a superlative sentence in the comment section, and I will give you some feedback. I hope you enjoyed today's video. You're the best for learning with me. Do you see what I did there? Before you go, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And as always, keep smiling, keep laughing, keep learning, and keep that tea brewing.